Literally, these are just raws that I've shot in camera, but it has a really cool vintage vibe that can kind of create this mixed media approach to your entire project. Hey, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. So good to see all of you here. I'm super excited about today because today I want to answer the question that I probably get the most in my business, and that's, Josh, how the heck do you shoot photo and video at the same time? Over the last couple of years, I've developed a style that allows me to shoot photo and video and deliver really high quality wedding films to my couples alongside beautiful candid imagery of the day. And today I want to talk you through that entire process. So first off, let's talk about my approach to the actual wedding filmmaking process. I firmly believe that weddings are not the beginning of a couple's story. They are just a new chapter in an already existing story. Chances are the couple met months or maybe even years ago, and they've built their relationship and evolved in their love over the course of a long time, through hardships, through trials, through mountaintop moments and incredible experiences they've had together. And now here they are saying, you're my person, you're the person I want to commit to and spend the rest of my life with. Let's turn that page, let's start a new chapter together, here we go. And so what I love doing with my wedding films is going, hey, let's lean into that story that you've already had, that journey you've already begun. Let's capture that story, let's record that story, so that story can become the audio bed of the wedding film, so that when you look back on your wedding film, it's completely unique because it's your story, it's your journey. The way that I actually capture this is I do it very kind of documentary style, where I just sit down with a couple on a separate day, turn a mic on in the room and just say like, hey, bring some drinks, bring some food, whatever. Let's just have a conversation and you just unpack your story with me. I'll ask intentional questions, but literally it's just a time for them to reflect, to kind of think back on their love, on their journey, on that relationship, and what's led them to this point of now going, all right, here we are, we're committing to each other, let's move into the future together. And then during this recording time, I'll also record any personalized vows or notes that they have. But effectively, this means logistically for me as a videographer, I've already captured almost all the audio I want to capture for their wedding film before the wedding even happens, or at least on a separate day from the wedding itself. What this process does is kind of twofold. Number one, it really allows my couples to be super present and intentional on the wedding day itself. Because we've already captured this audio, or we're going to capture it on a separate day, I don't have to worry about walking up to them, interrupting them in the middle of a conversation, putting the microphone on them. It allows the actual vows during the wedding ceremony to be super personal and private between them. They don't have the pressure of going, well, now I have to say it perfectly in front of our officiant, in front of mom and dad and all the friends and family who are here watching. And if I make a mistake, that mistake is going to be immortalized in my wedding film forever. We've actually recorded this in a very private space, alone with just the two of them on a separate time. There's very, very minimal audio I have to capture on the wedding day, which one, allows my couples to be super present, but then two, means I can focus on just capturing highlight clips of the actual wedding day itself alongside still images without the pressure of having to capture kind of continuous video with audio, because I know I'm going to be using that for the wedding film. Logistically, this means I don't have to worry about wind noise, I don't have to worry about interference. Now, I will still capture some ambient audio, some kind of environmental sounds, all that stuff that's happening on the wedding day, so it feels like you're still immersed in the environment. But what I'm not doing is interrupting in the middle of intentional private conversations to put a mic on someone. I'm allowing them to have that space while still capturing a very intimate, very personal recording of their story and their journey offsite in a separate location. It's just a really fun, really personal, really kind of unique way of filming weddings. All right, so we've talked about the philosophy and kind of how I approach wedding filmmaking and how that frees me up to be able to shoot clips throughout the day alongside of some beautiful candid imagery. Now let's talk about in-camera logistics and how I actually make it happen. So in terms of camera specs, I usually look for a camera that can capture at least 20 megapixel RAWs, if not higher. The Canon R3 that I'm shooting on captures 24 megapixels, which is perfect. And then for video specs, I'm looking for at least 4K 60, if not 4K 120. And because I'm going to be switching back and forth between shooting stills and shooting video, I want a camera that has a great buffer and can process a lot of data very quickly and can shoot very high frame rate stills. I'll talk about that in a second, which usually leads me towards cameras that are geared towards sports or action, like the Canon R3 that I'm shooting on currently. Now I've done these kind of films on the 5D Mark IV, on the Canon R6, on the Canon R5. You could absolutely shoot these on other cameras as well, but I've just found cameras that are built for sports are built for very, very high data throughput. And so having a good buffer and having a camera that can shoot high frame rate stills, which again means high buffer rate, is really, really critical for making this whole process happen. So then in terms of actually capturing the content in the camera, there's two methods that I use. So number one, I'm just going to be switching back and forth between photo mode and video mode. Because I don't shoot with assistants and because I'm shooting both photo and video together, I don't have to worry about an entire media team of people capturing everything. I'm the only one who's capturing photo and video the entire day, which means I get the priority to be in all the right places at all the right times and kind of get to spend a lot of really intimate, really personal time with the couple themselves. And so I can switch between photo and video, grab a few stills, switch over to video mode, grab some nice video, switch back and forth throughout the day. But then your question becomes, what happens when you need to capture something like a first kiss or a first dance or a first look or something where I want to have that captured on both photo and video? I want to be able to deliver a high quality raw image of that in the photo gallery, but I also want to include that in their wedding film. This is exactly why I said I need a camera that can shoot high frame rate stills, because I've actually integrated effectively stop motion video into my wedding film workflow. So what I'll do is I'll set the camera up to shoot high frame rate stills, and then throughout the day, I will just hold that shutter button down and shoot around 12 frames per second in bursts of about 50 to 80 images, capturing an entire burst of stills very, very quickly. These are all full res raw images that I can grab any one of those images and use that in the wedding gallery, but then I'll actually go through in Lightroom and edit all of the images together, export all of those, and then import those into Premiere, convert those into a stop motion animation, basically like a little GIF that I then integrate into the entire wedding film. So then throughout the entire wedding day, I'm shooting stills, I'm shooting video, and I'm shooting these high frame rate bursts of stills. And because the camera can capture all three of these things seamlessly, it allows me to shoot photo, video, and effectively both at the same time, and then integrate both of those into the photo workflow and into the video workflow. And it's a really nice, seamless process. So now I want to actually kind of walk you through the edit of how I actually integrate this into my workflow. So I'm guessing the photo workflow of shooting a still, editing that still in Lightroom, and then delivering that in the gallery. You're probably familiar with that. Actually shooting and editing video, that's pretty simplistic. But what I want to do today is walk you through the editing process of those stop motion GIFs and how I actually integrate those into my wedding films. So let's go ahead and jump right into Lightroom and Premiere, and I'm going to show you how I do the whole thing. All right, so now we're here in Lightroom and basically getting ready to process all these images that I've captured as bursts and getting ready to process those for the video. So if I open up these images here and kind of go through them quickly, you can see as I individually click through the images here, these were all kind of shot in a burst. I did some movement as I was shooting that burst. Now, obviously, any one of these images here I can take into the develop module and go through and throw a preset on that, do any kind of tweaks that I want to do, but then the entire batch of them is a batch I can use for the video. So let's go ahead and I want to show you the process of actually editing these photos for the video. So the first thing you have to do is find the beginning of the actual animation. So if I clicked here to the beginning photo, I shot a couple test images before I actually started firing the burst. So you see this image here, and then the whole frame changes. And then what I'll do is I'm just gonna do these in black and white for now because that's nice and easy. So apply a preset to that, go ahead and tweak things to how I'd like it to be, bring up the blacks a little bit, add a little bit more contrast. I know there's some grain on that image, so go ahead and bring that down. Raise the contrast again. That's a pretty decent kind of overall look. Then I'm going to scroll to the end of the sequence down here, click that last image and click sync. Now here's an important thing. You want to make sure that crop is on just in case. So like for me, I'm usually editing wedding galleries and I want to make sure that if I've cropped an image for the gallery, I usually edit the film after I've delivered the images. I want to make sure that that image is not cropped in and you don't have a random image in the middle of a sequence. And so I always have crop on. I'll turn off any of the masking things because I'm not going to do any masking currently in this image, but synchronize all the colors, the black and white mix, all that kind of stuff, and make sure that crop is on. Click sync. All those images will sync. So now you have an entire burst of what is this 59 images that are all prepped and ready for the sequence. All right, so then once you have the sequence of images built, sequence number one, I'm gonna go ahead and export those images. I'm gonna put that in a folder on my desktop called GIFs, and then I'm gonna rename this to, I'm just gonna call it YouTube GIF 1, and then start number 1. And then a pro tip here, I always, whatever you call your sequences, I always add the number of the actual sequence itself at the end of the text before the start number. So this is literally just so I can figure out which image sequence I'm actually working with, because if I just called it like YouTube GIF and then started exporting images, when as soon as I move on to the next one, now that's also called YouTube GIF, and I'm gonna have to change the numbers. It just gets really, really complicated. YouTube GIF 1, and then for the next one, YouTube GIF 2, GIF 3, GIF 4, and that way it's very, very easily identifiable when you go through and do that. So then literally you just export that and you're good to go. And don't worry if any of these images kind of show up in color. It's just the previews in Lightroom. Those are actually black and white. You can see those rendering as I kind of hover over them. So then we'll move on to the next sequence. Again, same kind of process, turn it to black and white, tweak the contrast, anything I want to have happen here. Might drop the grain just a little bit for this one. Go to the end of the sequence, which is over here. Synchronize all the settings. wait for the process up in the top to finish, and then as soon as that's done, you're good to export those. So then again, I'll export that as GIF number 2, and it'll export. So then basically you just go through the entire gallery of images this way, editing everything, processing everything for these animations. Again, I'm doing these ones in black and white. Sometimes I do them in color, but really whatever kind of suits your editing style and the mood you're going for in your film. And then once those are all finished, then you can go into Premiere and actually import the images. So let's dive into Premiere and look at that. All right, so here we are now in Premiere, and I've already imported the images, but I'm gonna walk you through the workflow for this. Now, before you import your images, this is just a pro tip. It makes it a lot easier to import these photos later. If you go into your preferences and go down to timeline, and you change your still image default duration to 2 frames, I always run my images at 2 frames because again, in my camera, I'm running those at 12 frames per second. And so 2 frames gets me in a 24 frame per second timeline, gets me the exact motion I was capturing in real time. You can change this to whatever you want. I found that 2 frames worked really, really well. This will automatically default the duration of those stills to 2 frames, so you don't have to change the duration once you've imported them. Then you would just go in, import the images like normal, find the folder on your desktop, go ahead and import that. I've already done this, and here they all are. I always have this set to view the list mode so that I can see all the images. They're all in order. Sometimes when you have them in the icon view, it actually puts them in out of order for some silly reason. So always have them in the list view. And again, you can see I have like GIF 1 all the way down, then that switches over to GIF number 2, GIF number 3, all the way down, and we're good to go. Once you have all these images imported, if you scroll over to video duration, you can see that all these are set to 2 frames, which is just automatic during import. And then once you have all the images imported, then you're going to actually create sequences in Premiere for however many sets of images you have. In this case, I have 7 sets, and so I'm going to go ahead and create 7 sequences that I'm going to drop all those images in. Now, I've already built all of them out, but for the sake of this video, I want to show you how to do one of them. So then to get all these images into the sequence, all you're going to do is scroll to the top of that sequence. So photo GIF 1, photo number 1, scroll down to the bottom of those, find that here, 61 frames that are in there. Drop all those in. Again, they're going to drop at 2 frames per image. And then I think the actual set, I didn't cut those out here. So I'm going to cut those first 2 images off. And now we have a set of images that will play if we just play them, 2 frames per image, and you have a beautiful sequence. So if we go ahead and look at the other ones here, this is kind of a cool little one of this truck with the boat going by. So we can just kind of scroll through the other sequences and just see how these sequences of images, obviously these were all raw images in Lightroom that we could edit, deliver to a client. Now they're actually video sequences within Premiere, so we can use these as part of the video, which is what I'm going to show you how to do next. So then we're going to go back to the actual project file and create a brand new sequence. We're going to call this sequence the real sequence. I'm going to set this to 4K. And then what we can do is from this animation sequences bin, we can actually drag these animations into the sequence that we have here. We can drag all of them in if we'd like to do that. So now we have an entire sequence of all these sequences of images. So if we just play this, now we have literally an entire sequence of all these animation sequences back to back to back to back. So you can just see all these sequences play back basically as video clips within the project. They have a little bit of that stop motion feel to them. And if this is where you want to end, that's great. You can literally end right here and you're done. You have clips that you can use as videos within a project. You've literally shot stills that you can use for the client to deliver those. And you also have clips that are a few seconds long each that you can use within your video project. I like to take it one more step further and kind of add this vintage 4x3 matte with some grain just to kind of give it this little 4x3 8mm kind of vibe in the films. And so I'm going to show you how we do that. So I have these assets that I've downloaded from Ezra Cohen's collection. I'll link that below if you're interested in checking that out. But basically we have this 4x3 kind of frame that we're going to use. We have this little burn that we're going to use at the end of the actual clip itself, some 35mm grain, and then I've created this little black video file that we're going to use as a matte to kind of cover up the rest of the stuff here. So first off, we're going to add the 4x3 matte to the whole thing. You can see that there. We're going to set the opacity to multiply, so now you can actually see the animation below that. Scale it down to about like 78% is I think where I typically like it to be. Then we're going to add this black video file, stretch that out to cover the entire thing, and go into the opacity and create a matte of that fits the edges of this frame. So I drag the 4 corners out, create this entire matte. I always make sure to turn my mask feather on the edges all the way off, and then we invert that. Let's click away, see if I missed any spots. I did. Go ahead and bring that in just a little bit. And then this specific matte here, I might have to tweak it a few times because the edges it's actually like a moving matte, which is really cool. So it actually moves in the frame gives it a little bit more of an actual analog vintage feel, but that feels really, really good just like that. So then we're gonna add some grain over the entire thing, set that to hard light. You can see this is really starting to come together like the vibe of this already. But then what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna scale these animations down to fit the box here. So if we scale those down to about the same size at 78%, I'm actually gonna go one over just because the actual matte box moves a little bit to make sure we don't clip that out. I'm gonna copy that motion to the rest of these sequences so that all of these are set to 79%. And now we have this really nice kind of vintagey effect with some grain over top of the whole thing. You can see that matte box is moving around. I really like these assets from Ezra Cohen's stuff. They're just phenomenal if you're interested in checking those out. But we have this really kind of cool effect that feels a little bit more stop motion, vintagey. It's just a really cool effect to have to kind of tie the whole thing together and make it feel like a little bit of a mixed media approach to creating this film. And then if we want to add a burn kind of to the beginning of it, I usually wouldn't use all of these like animations back to back to back. These would just kind of be cutaways in the middle of a film. But this is effectively how I create this. So then if you can see, we have a burn at the beginning. That burn would go in, allow the sequence to happen there, and then we'd cut to a video clip here, and then maybe back to another sequence of images, back to another video clip. And you can just kind of go back and forth between all that media and have a really, really cool effect throughout the video. Now there's one more little effect I like to throw on there, and this is little 8mm kind of the film perforation here. I'll throw that on, I'll throw the burn on top of that. And this is already an alpha layer, so I can just roll that down to the 78% that we had for the other one. It's not perfect because the film would actually cut in there, and I just haven't taken the time to mask that out. But again, tie it all together, and this is a really cool effect that you can have. Make your footage feel very, very vintage. Literally, these are just raws that I've shot in camera, but it has a really cool vintage vibe that can kind of create this mixed media approach to your entire project. So then the way I would actually use this practically would be I would shrink all of this down just to the size of one clip, and I would do this for every single one of my clips, so we can delete the audio here too. So then I would have each individual clip be its own sequence on its own, and then if I wanted to add this effect to another clip down the road, I would just copy all this stuff over to that clip. And now we have the same kind of effect, and I might not use the burn on every single one, so it's not the exact same like repetition constantly. But then literally you have this beautiful mixed media approach to creating a film. You're able to capture photo and video at the same time. And this is a really kind of cool process if you want to integrate some video into your photo sessions, into weddings, into elopements, or really into anything you want to do. If you want to be able to shoot photo and video at the same time, deliver full stills, but then also be able to deliver a full film alongside of that. This is just kind of a fun approach and fun way to be able to do that. So hopefully that's been a helpful look at my photo and video process, how I actually integrate photos and stills into my wedding films, and I'm able to shoot photo and video at the same time. If you have any questions, feel free to drop those below. And if you're sitting here going, okay, Josh, this is all well and good, but I have no idea how to actually shoot video, go ahead and click this link right here. This will walk you through the basics of video, everything you need to know to actually turn your camera on, set up the video settings, and start recording video. All right, hope that helps. I'll see you in the next video. Peace.